Is this the year we finally settle this whole spying score? You know, in 2013, it was kind of the year of the snoop, wasn't it? 2014 is the year we presumably stopped the snoop. Well, good luck. To hear one judge tell it, yeah, well, it should be stopped because that particular judge said that all this went too far. To hear still another judge argue, I just think weeks later, no, it should not be stopped because he said the snoops really didn't go all that far. So Judge Andrew Napolitano says, regardless of where you stand on this subject, nothing has changed here to keep the snoops from still snooping, right? That's the bottom line.
Well, you're right, Neil, and the latest issue is a letter from Senator Bernie Sanders, an independent from Vermont, to the head of the NSA saying, are you spying on Congress? Answer, Congress gets the same constitutional protections as the rest of the American public, which is to say none.
Yeah.
Now, that might be their undoing, because Congress has something that the rest of us don't, the power of the purse over the NSA. It could turn the spigot off on the money that they use to perpetuate and perpetrate all this spying.
Well, you know, we're only one crisis away from just sort of looking the other way with this stuff, aren't we?
I'll tell you what we're close to. We are close to a generation of Americans who will not even know what privacy means, because they will grow up in a society in which everything they do from the moment of their birth, no matter how intimate or private the moment, will be monitored by the government, and they will expect that.
Does it bother you that a lot of them are just chill about it?
Yes, it does bother me that a lot of Americans are willing to surrender freedom for safety, and that is typical throughout history. But what is also typical throughout history is when the crisis passes, when the reason for the surrendering of freedom in order to obtain safety is no longer there, the freedom doesn't come back, or if it does, it doesn't come back all the way. And then that surrender is used by future generations of government as precedent for asking for more surrender of freedom. And the bottom line is that freedom goes down and the power of the government goes up, and the country becomes nothing like what the founders gave us 200 years ago.
But the founders didn't have all these cell phones and gizmos and devices, all of which, bit by bit, take a lot of that away.
That's one of the reasons that we have two different judicial opinions here.
Right.
One judge says we're going to follow Supreme Court decisions that came down before the age of the internet. Another judge says, in my opinion, if the Supreme Court had to review this today, it would reject those old opinions and say you need a search warrant when you want to spy on people. You can't justify spying on 320 million Americans because you're after 6. The Supreme Court will have to decide this.
Yeah, if ever. Maybe they will soon.
I think they'll be forced to when you have different judges saying different things, because the Constitution can't mean different things in different parts of the country, especially when the spying is as massive and pervasive and presidentially driven as this one is.
Very well put, Judge, as it always is. All right, now we're hearing President Obama is inviting key lawmakers to discuss surveillance reform on Thursday, but should we really expect any end, at least anytime soon, to the spying mess to former cyber czar for both President Obama and President Bush on whether any of this spying gets reined in or even should get reined in? What do you think?
Well, I think for the first part, after September 11th, we were almost promised that we would go after the terrorists, we would go after the things that are really important to better protect the people without giving up privacy and civil liberties. And here we are, 12 years later, where we're now saying, well, we really needed to do this. We really think this is important. And like you said a moment ago, we now have everything under the world that has a technology associated with it that basically people use to communicate. They're saying, well, now we can better stop these things because we have more information.
But Howard, don't you buttress your argument more, that is those who advocate more of this, or at least continuation of this, if you have a clear quid pro quo for your actions? In other words, that if you could cite it has stopped a number of incidents. And when push came to shove, the administration had a very tough time doing that. That incidents that it said were in the dozens that were stopped, ultimately they couldn't find a one.
Well, and there lies the problem, is because when you look at a small subgroup of people that are looking to do us harm, generally you have a pretty good idea how you can find those people. But when you look at the 320 million audience that's out there, to be able to say, oh, gee, we know somewhere in this thing something bad is going to happen, so therefore we have to surveil everybody. And by the way, we wouldn't like that very much if other countries do it to us, which they already do anyway. But we would be screaming and yelling if other countries did that to us, and we're as open about it as we are.
Do you think that a lot of this is just the nature of the beast and all this beastly but very cool technology, and that if we want all this stuff, the flip side is we've got to surrender a lot of stuff?
Well, and that's one of the things we've said a number of times, even when I was at the White House, is just because you can doesn't mean you should do it. And therein lies the problem. And one of the other things we're dealing with is not because one judge in one district says one thing, another judge says something else. This will eventually have to go to the Supreme Court, because we won't have various districts agreeing on this. And the other thing is, just because Congress makes a law or Congress has been briefed doesn't make that automatically constitutional. So this is really going to be complex. The thing that most of us hope is this moves through the system very quickly, because in the meantime, there's no stopping things. Things continue as they were.
Howard Schmidt, thank you very much.
Good talking with you, Neil.